Okay guys, this video is going to be focused on F2, F3 and F4. Okay? Now what I might try and do is I might try and do it so that particularly F2 and F3, and you'll see why in a minute, I'll do them so that you can, if you want, to pause the video and see them side by side, because the most amount of mistakes I see at GCSE level with this type of question is confusing F2 and F3. So I'm going to write down the first question of F2. X plus 6 over 2 equals 5. Right. The next 20 seconds of this video is going to be the most important 20 seconds you've got. It is so important to think of these questions like I'm about to say. Whatever you do last when you write this down, that is what you do first when solving the equation. So let's write down what we see here. We see x plus 6 divided by 2 equals 5. So the last instruction we gave was divided by 2. We did x plus 6 divided by 2 equals 5. So therefore, because the divided by 2 was the last thing I said, the first thing I'm going to do is multiply by 2, do the inverse of that last instruction. So x plus 6 divided by 2 equals 5, so therefore I must times by 2 first. That means that my divided by 2 gets cancelled out. So therefore I'm just left on this left-hand side with x plus 6 equals 5 times 2 is 10. Then I just simply look and say, well, to get x by itself, I know that I do the inverse again. So minus 6, so x would equal 4, final answer. And some of you may even say, well, let's just check if that's right. If I substitute 4 in place of x there, 4 plus 6 is 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, the next example, x minus 1 over 4 equals 9. Again, guys, I want to solve it and I look and I say to myself, what was my last instruction? X minus 1 divided by 4 equals 9. So the last instruction was divided by 4, so that's going to be the first thing I do the inverse of. Times by 4, x minus 1, because it cancels out the 4 there, equals 36. Add 1, x would equal 37, final answer. Right, this is incredibly important. F3 looks like this. Look how similar the first question of F2 and F3 are. I've got x, I've got a 2, I've got a 6, and I've got a 5, and I've got a 5. I've done that on purpose. Listen to how I'm now going to say this next question. X divided by 2 plus 6 equals 5. That's different to me saying x plus 6 divided by 2 equals 5. The last instruction here was divided by 2. Listen again. In this one, x divided by 2 plus 6 equals 5. The last instruction I say here is plus 6. So therefore my inverse will be dealing with that, and the inverse of plus 6 is minus 6. So therefore that is what I do first. So that is why they're different. Say them out loud to yourself and say, what was the last instruction I said? And that is the one you deal with first when solving. So x over 2 hasn't changed. That cancels out. 5 minus 6 equals negative 1. Then I say to myself, x divided by 2 equals negative 1. So the inverse of that is the times by 2. So x would equal negative 2. Because negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. Okay, one more example. X over 4 minus 1 equals 9. Again, I've done it on purpose, guys. Look at that question there. Look at that question there. They're both very, very similar. But if I say it out loud, they are slightly different. This one, x minus 1 divided by 4 equals 9. So divided by 4 was said last. X divided by 4 minus 1 equals 9. The minus 1 was said last. So therefore, I would go, right, because it said last, I would deal with that first, do the inverse, add 1, x over 4, that cancels out. 9 plus 1 10. Then I would x divided by 4. Inverse of that is times by 4. So x would equal 40. Final answer. Okay, so if you need to pause the video now and compare these two, please do. I'm going to do an example of F4 as well for you guys. Okay, so pause it if you need to. If not, I'm doing an example of F4. Right, F4 really brings in our knowledge now of F2, probably, but we're going to use the same process. I'll do two examples. 6x plus 1 over 5 equals 5. Right, whenever you solve these, you just say to yourself, let me say out loud, what do I say last? 6x plus 1 divided by 5 equals 5. So the last operation I did was to divide by 5. So therefore my inverse here is going to be to multiply by 5. Remember, I always do the inverse of my last instruction. 6x plus 1 divided by 5 equals 5. Divide by 5 was last, so I multiply by 5. So 6x plus 1 is going to remain up here. That cancels out. Equals 5 times 5 is 25. Then you just do normal solving. Inverse 6x plus 1, so therefore I'm minus 1. 6x equals 24. 6x equals 24, so divide by 6, x would equal 4. Final answer. Again, for those of you that want to just really prep your maths, you know that x equals 4, I substitute into there. 6 times 4 is 24, plus the 1 is 25. 25 divided by 5 is 5. Okay, last example of this video, guys. 5x take away 2 over 2 equals negative 21. If you want to pause the video, do it yourself, check the answer after, absolutely do that. If not, you listen to me now. 5x take away 2 divided by 2 equals negative 21. So the last instruction, the last operation I was told to do here was to divide by 2. So therefore that's the first thing I'm going to do the inverse of. So I times by 2 times by 2. 5x minus 2 equals negative 21 times 2 is negative 42. Then I just say 5x minus 2 equals negative 42. So the last instruction was minus 2. So I add 2, add 2. 5x equals negative 40 in this case. And then I say to myself, what do I do now to get x by itself? I divide by 5, divide by 5. So it'll be x equals negative 8. And that is my final answer. Okay, guys, so rewatch the video if you need to. Do what you got to do. Really important video, this one. So hopefully you understand it doing the questions.